Hey guys, welcome to part 2 of Climbing the Rating Ladder, Gauri's Guide. We're playing 1151. I'm going to play the same exact opening as we did in the previous video, ascending to 1000 rating level, and see what changes in our opponent's approach here. What are they going to do differently than before? Usually white plays knight f3 here, that's the same. And in the previous two games, white played d4 both times, and then we got to a Scotch game. Okay, this time it's a little different. Play c3, the Ponziani opening. So the intention is d4 followed by takes and takes. What is the drawback of this move? Well, I can actually play knight e4 attacking this pawn. Now, note that he can't play knight c3 guarding his pawn due to the pawn being on c3. So that's the drawback. It makes sense to roll off your move based on your opponent's move, right? In this case, the drawback of your opponent's move is knight c3, so we play something that, it's a good developing move, but it also hits on the weakness. d3, okay, so clearly white is a bit more defensive here. I can fight for the center with d5. Now it's kind of like we're playing a Scotch game style with d5 and our knight come to the middle, but the thing is, these two moves may not be the best moves for white here. Usually the bishop comes out or the knight comes out to c3. So I think that even though we're playing black, we've already equalized here. White's first move advantage essentially disappeared. Okay, he played bishop g5 pinning. Seems like a standard move. I could take this pawn and open up this. So I think this is a good move. He has to play bishop takes knight and then take the pawn, because if he does this, I could play queen takes d1, unpinning my knight, and then take this pawn. Okay, so we can see a typical mistake forming here, just calculating 1 to 2 moves in some basic lines. I was able to win a pawn here, and the king is now in the middle, can't castle. Okay, what should I do here? I should follow the basic principles. Just develop your pieces, and maybe if you can capitalize on the opponent's position while doing that, their weaknesses, even better. This move makes sense. We could actually castle queenside here and attack the king with tempo. It seems to be a decent move, castling with check and bishop g4 pinning the knight. Okay, he plays king d e1. Fair enough. So how do I continue increasing the pressure? I see that I could play something like f5, f4, harassing the bishop. I could also develop my bishop on f8. It's not doing anything. These are the pieces that are currently inactive. This bishop doesn't really have a great square to go to. Whereas pushing this pawn is actually not so bad. I'm going to try pushing the pawn. I see that it's pretty aggressive. We're trying to play f4, push the bishop back, and then occupy this diagonal. Sometimes when you don't know where to put your piece or you don't have good squares for your pieces, you can move some pawns to assist h3. That makes sense. So I'm thinking I want to move back initially, and I'm just making sure that it's safe to do so. There are some complicated variations that could potentially happen because my bishop is undefended, so I had to watch out for any sort of tactics. Now I don't see anything. There might be some sort of a knight takes e5. However, I calculated that after bishop e2, and if he takes my knight further, I can actually do a check and skewer. It's a bit complicated, but it's fine. Okay, so this move really doesn't do anything about what's going on the king side, and actually creates more holes in white's position. I immediately see the drawback here. Knight b4 or bishop b4. Or I can continue on my plan of f4. Now, it's almost like I'm spoiled here. I have too many good options. What should I do? Knight b4. He can play knight a3. I'm better off than before. Let's compare that to f4. Bishop goes here. Bishop c5. That looks dangerous. He can castle though. I can always play this after I play f4 as well. That's interesting. You can combine some of these motifs. Checking here. If he blocks, I do win. I do win a piece after I take this off. He doesn't have enough people guarding it. So many options. They all seem to be equally good, except for knight b4. So I'm going to pick f4 first. I can throw this in there and then decide what to do. Makes this bishop a little passive. Also, he can go wrong and play bishop d2. After bishop d2, I'm going to take the knight. Then I'm going to take the bishop, and then I'm going to pin the knight that's coming in. Okay, so now he decides to do the tactic, but after I played f4 already. So a lot of things hanging here. So here we really have to take our time. Currently, we're down a pawn. This knight's hanging, our bishop's hanging, his bishop is hanging. They're all under attack. So I have to choose the right sequence here. That's going to make me at least not lose material and possibly win material. Now, since we're in such an aggressive position, my gut tells me that there must be something great for us. So let's calculate the most basic line. If knight takes knight, then bishop takes bishop. So he's won a pawn. Then I can take his bishop. So even the basic line is actually quite good. I end up getting his knight and his bishop, and he only wins my bishop and a pawn. That's the base case scenario. Let's do this one. Bishop e2. And if knight takes here, I can check and then win his rook. That's a lot of material. If he takes back, I can take here. I also win 2 pieces there as well. What about this one? If I go here, that's a fair trade. And then I can still take. So all of them actually end up winning. So once again, the same exact situation here. I have too many choices. Do we flip a coin? Usually we take more time and evaluate, but if you're constrained for times and all of them are good, just make sure the one that you're going to play, you double checked it and make sure that it's not a blunder or you miss something. So the one that I initially went after was bishop takes e2. I kind of liked that one. But this seems like the most stable move. This knight takes e5. He takes my bishop. I take his bishop. No fancy business for white. It's pretty straightforward. So I won a piece. So as we can see, we have 3 pieces and he only has 2. And we are still in a very aggressive position. Check, develop your pieces quickly. I like this move because now I see that our rook, the king is going to go here. Our rook, our final piece that's, watching TV, not doing anything, is going to come in the game. We're actually threatening mate here. Don't tell anybody. We're actually threatening mate on f2. And the question is, number 1, does he see it? Number 2, how on earth does he stop? This was by the way, I could have won this is mate. Wait a second. Was this also mate? Wait, hold on. Oh my goodness, that was mate too. Unbelievable. I'll take this one though. Just for illustrative purposes, I guess I should play this. We didn't even need the rook. No, we didn't need the rook. We needed f2. I was playing this before. Okay, thank goodness I didn't miss mate in 1. Great. So, interesting game. Where did white go wrong here? So the opening was fine. c3 is actually not a bad move, although Italian or Spanish is more common. Now d3. White's a little bit passive in this opening. His bishop is, locked in. Here, he should take the pawn. When there's conflict in the center like this, and there's captures, I think players around this rating, they seem to just kind of wing it and not really work out the details. So whenever there's like a contact between your pieces and your opponent's pieces, you're supposed to take your time and make sure that everything's all right. So this, I was able to just win a pawn directly after this move. And then things start to go downhill from there. And here, once again, the king is in the middle, like in the previous video with the 1000 rating climb. A lot of times the king just ends up never castling. And in this position, yeah, all the complications, it was kind of winging it. White took a huge risk here. Probably white should just try to develop the rest of his pieces. But he didn't and ended up losing the complications. So let's go to the next. And it's his beautiful checkmate. Let's go to the next game. Okay, we got another one. 1139. E4 best by test. He played d5 just now. Let's take it. This is Scandinavian defense. So we see a new opening other than e4, e5 directly for once. Let's just attack that queen. Take advantage of the queen that comes out in the opening. Yeah, already I'm seeing a theoretical variation here. This is part of a variation. Maybe he watched a YouTube video or something. So I'm going to develop, in this case, I'm going to develop fianchetto style. I'll explain the reason in just a moment. So now you'll see why I played g3, bishop g2. Against this queen, again, losing that drawback, I'm able to develop my bishop and hit the queen one more time. Without the pawn on g3, I wouldn't be able to do it. Queen b4. Venturing out a little bit into the unknown, our opponent is. Interesting. I'm going to let him take that pawn if he wants. If he takes it, the queen is getting really, really trappy, and I can get this pawn back as well. So this looks like black has sort of a death wish here in terms of his queen. Which rook should I move? It doesn't matter here. I think this one is fine. And now we'll decide whether we need to take the pawn or not, or we can trap the queen. I don't see a clear way to trap the queen, so I'm going to go for the pawn. Also attacking the knight, by the way. And this is a pretty significant achievement. Our rook is now super active on the 7th row. So the best place for the rook, because it hits all of black's pieces, and at least the majority of black's pieces here, right? Black's in trouble already. He took the knight, but honestly, that just helps my pieces even more. It looks like black is losing the thread of the game a little bit. Okay, that does defend his knight, and it gets his king to safety. So that's not a bad move. But still, I smell there's some really dangerous things here. It's going to happen. Okay, let's bring the last guy in the game. Every piece is now active. This bishops are beautiful. The rook's nice. Knight's not bad. Queen's not bad. Rooks are great. And okay, I was planning to take the knight or trap the queen somehow. Looks like our opponent just gave up a full bishop. I'm going to take it. I'm going to keep this rook here and take it with the one that's not as good. So that's already a free bishop. And let's see. Can we trap this queen? If we go here, he goes over here. Now, then we could try this. Where does he run to? Maybe here. It's not as easy. I feel like, and if I go here, by the way, there's this move. What if we kind of prepared a little bit more? What can we possibly do to prepare this? Bishop d6 seems interesting. I can also just abandon this idea completely and just, you know, if the higher aim doesn't work, just go for something lower. I guess that's probably easier. It seems too contrived to win the queen. With all these squares the queen can run to, this seems like a simple enough approach. Yeah, white is up a piece, up the pawn, queen is suspicious. A lot of black's pieces are vulnerable. Still looking for ways to trap the queen. This is possible. And he runs over there. I find myself in positions where I have too many choices. Okay, this is interesting. Knight, maybe knight b1 perhaps. Okay, I'm gonna play this move, knight b1. I really want to get that queen. If he takes, he's gonna lose his queen guaranteed. If he goes here, I have a nice little double attack, fork attack. And at the end of that, after I take the rook, let's say his queen was over here, I might even get some sort of a back rank mate. Takes, checkmate. Definitely there are tactics bubbling underneath this position. Okay, he goes for that. So let's go for that line. Bishop c7, attacking the queen and the rook. He's going to move possibly here. Possibly. And then I'm going to grab the rook. Takes. Then I'm going to grab the knight. Same philosophy. To grab the rook. I just made sure that there's no fancy business here. There's nothing. You can always just defend it with h4. Yep, always just defend with h4. No big deal. And now he's even more vulnerable on d7 than before. Now I take with the rook. I'm trying to bait the rook take and leave this unguarded. He doesn't fall for that. Now I could kind of checkmate the queen in a sense. It's kind of a joke, just to trade queens, make it not go anywhere. I can also play rook b7, increasing the pressure. Since this is a, climbing the rating ladder video, we're going to play the most clinical fashion. Trade the queens off when you have an overwhelming material advantage. Welcome to the Gauri clinic. Okay, now we're just going to trade off more pieces, possibly even get this knight in the game. The drawback of that move is you just made the g7 pawn have a target on its back. And I actually don't see how to stop this. And then after that, I go check again and then bring the other rook in and mate. Okay, so he resigned. Good game. So where did black go wrong here? The opening was okay, Scandinavian. And queen d6, part of a line. And I played a line that helps me bring the bishop to attack the queen later on. I don't really mind the pin because I have sufficient defenders. So white was maybe slightly better. I think things started going downhill with this queen excursion. Once again, breaking the fundamental principles of the opening, which is to get castled and get your minor pieces out. Usually when you sway from these things without proper justification, things go awry. So that's what happened here. I've developed my minor pieces, connected my rooks, castled. This is how you complete development. In fact, I would say officially white completed development after queen d2 because all the pieces are now communicating with each other. And the moment you connect the rooks, it's officially the middle game. So black has not done so. So he has no business going for this pawn and then being in trouble. So I think that's where black went wrong in this game. And I used all my pieces and I was able to win. All right, next one. This time we're playing a 1081. So we're seeing a variety of openings now at this level. No more e4, e5. We've seen d5 the last game and now c5. So let's just play according to principles, get the minor pieces out, and control the center. I see that he's playing the dragon fianchetto style. Now, in the Sicilian, normally I just play d4 and trade off these pawns, open up our bishops, and put the knight in the middle. It's a pretty good spot for the knight. So I can see that black has actually kind of studied at least a little bit of commonly played moves. This was pretty much absent in the under 1,000 range. I'm going to keep developing. So this tells me that, especially after if he plays this move, he studied some basic theory. Okay, now this one I'm not so sure. I can play e5. He kind of neglected the controlling the center with the pieces in the pawns part. So I'm considering if this is a good move. I think it is. Now the knight has to go back home or go to the side. Maybe he misplayed his theory or didn't study it properly, and now he finds himself in a little bit of trouble. This is wasting tempo if he goes back. If he goes over here, actually he might lose his knight. I can play g4. Kind of a surprising move, but the knight really doesn't have anywhere to go. Okay, he chooses to just go back home. I need to guard this pawn. I'm going to play f4. So as you can see, I can judge that my position is a success from how much space I have in my knights. Oh, this move, once again, what is the drawback of this move? We've seen this question asked multiple times. This square. Let me occupy that square. That makes a lot of sense. There we go. Check. This is one of the best outposts for a knight. So a square where no opponent's pawns can get us. That's called an outpost, especially with the strong pawn on e5. It's a strong outpost. And as a result of this knight, black can't castle. Now, one advantage alone usually is not enough to win, so we had to keep building on it. Let's build on it. Let me play. Need to develop with bishop. Bishop c4. Castle. Just let's do normal moves and develop. Let this knight just do its job. We can't really do much with it except restrict the pieces. Okay, that's not a bad move. He's trying to trade off our good knight. We could take that and bring our other knight in. We could also just let him take our knight. Which one is better? I think we'll just back up our knight with the second one. And we have an overall plan that we are adjusting based on our opponent's moves. Overall plan is always get your pieces out, castle, control the center. All right, so this move doesn't threaten me. I'm going to focus on my overall plan. Castle. I'm aware that I've pushed my f-pawn, which means my king is a bit vulnerable. I've checked to make sure that the check is not dangerous. It's not dangerous. I got this covered, so I'm fine. So in this position, even though I have a weakness here, the fact that I have such a good piece positioning, this offensive placement gives me some sort of defensive aura around my king because it keeps black's pieces at bay. I just thought of an interesting idea, maybe to put the bishop over on a3. He's trying to play b5, by the way. I gotta watch out for that. That move kind of helps his bishop come out. I think it's worth it to spend a tempo to stop a bunch of his pieces from coming out. Thinking about what the opponent wants to do is a good idea. I was thinking of developing this bishop. I see that this knight is quite annoying. Maybe it's time to trade the knight off after all. And then put the other knight here. That way my bishop has actually a new square on e3 to develop to. How is he gonna untangle? It's like these headphones are all tangled up, There are threats here. It just feels like, by the way, I forgot to mention that he should have probably taken with this pawn. This pawn actually made my bishop into an absolute monster. So, black is not in good shape here. Another thing is I can even bring my queen in here and go for mate. So I think he's had enough. He sacrifices the bishop desperately. But then this person is also becoming a monster. Ooh, I'm gonna enjoy this one. Because this is like, it's gonna be a fancy, I can smell a fancy checkmate. And everybody loves fancy checkmates, right? He's gonna be in a sort of crisscross mate after this sequence of moves. So he's probably gonna play king g8. And I'm going to try to get rid of that knight with queen d4. And if he blocks with queen e7, I was going to sack my queen. Oh no, he didn't play it. He didn't play the beautiful checkmate. That's okay. I'm going to go ahead with my queen d4 move. If he'd played that queen g8, that would have been pretty nice with the queen sacrifice. I might try to show it after the game. So white is completely winning. Black is busted here. King f6. I'm tempted to look for some sort of fancy checkmate here. Let's see. There is queen h4. That does the trick. That does the trick. I will pre-move this move. Yeah, so one good game. So what happened here? Let's look at this game from the beginning. He played the Sicilian defense. I still played knight f3 and fought for the center. I want to get rid of that pawn's influence and get my knight to the middle. He played the dragon variation, which is when they fianchetto like this. The bishop is kind of like a cannon. Very safe, but very influential. He should have played d6 or knight c6 here, but allowing this pawn, you have to control some center, otherwise, you know, this pawn will chase you back. And then I think this was a pretty weakening move. I was able to take advantage of it. So you don't want to, you know, give an outpost to the opponent. So after this, we got in a position where I just kept developing, maintaining my advantages, stopping the opponent's plan were some of the highlights. I made a trade that basically traded off this knight for this knight, practically. So this knight was superior to my knight here. This was kind of redundant, I felt like. So this trade helped me out. And taking with this pawn further made the king vulnerable. He sacrificed. And here's the position where I was like, okay, if he plays king to g8, I was going to play queen d4. And now my point is to checkmate here, or if he moves the knight, let's say here, well, I can checkmate there or checkmate here. Let's suppose he played this. Beautiful checkmate after queen e5. So this is what I said I was going to enjoy if this happened. That would have been great. Unfortunately, it didn't. But nevertheless, we found a checkmate here after king e7, queen d4, f6, queen h4, and he ran out of time. This would have been made as well. Okay. All right, this time he played e4, and he replied with a king pawn opening. And he plays a Petrov. This could be an attempt at a gambit, actually. Let's grab the pawn and see what happens. He plays the Stafford Gambit. This early Stafford Gambit. Let's accept it and see, you know, how he does it. Our pawn is in danger. Let's play d3, of course. He's probably going to play bishop c5. Maybe he watches a lot of Eric Rosen videos. Me too. Okay, so here what you shouldn't do is moves like e5, because black has a threat here of taking this pawn and then sacrificing his bishop and winning our queen. That would be really bad. So bishop g5 is blunder because knight takes e4, excuse me, and then we'll talk about this. It's a mating trap and checkmate. Oof. So we should play bishop e2, guarding against any, you know, dastardly plans. h5, yeah, definitely studied the Stafford Gambit. All right, I'm kind of on my own here. I'm gonna play h3 just to guard against the knight g4s. If I play something, oh, now this seems to be like either some sort of pre-move or just trigger happiness. I specifically played this move to avoid knight g4, whatever he had planned. So maybe this is a case of knowing something and blindly playing it, kind of in a cookie cutter fashion, just whipping it out at any moment. This does not look correct. There's just no way. He just lost a full piece. He's threatening mate here, so I can play bishop e3, guarding the mate. He takes my pawn. I take his bishop. He takes my rook. Still, I'm ahead in material, and his queen is almost trapped. So that's not a bad line. Is there anything else I can do? I can play bishop e3 and just develop my knight. I can play rook f1. So these are the choices here. What does my gut tell me? My gut tells me I should not focus on the pawn because we just want to develop our pieces and simplify. We're already up a full piece and a pawn. So if you have that much extra, don't be afraid to give something back. All right. Yeah, clearly our opponent is just winging it. fork or root time. So Stafford Gambit failed. Not the Stafford Gambit's fault, just the opponent didn't study it clearly or was just simply eager to play the same exact way. Our opponent just said, not sure what will work with your rating is crazy. He's just commented. He was a bit nervous, I guess. Good game. Okay, so what went wrong here? I think simply we should really analyze this gambit. So knight f6, giving up a pawn, and then trying to just open up all these lines. Of course, in the master level, this is not considered to be so great because they give a lot of value to middle pawns. But it is full of traps. So one of the traps is if white just plays bishop here, seemingly pinning the knight. Oh no, my queen, black says. Not so fast. Check. And ooh, brutal checkmate. Absolutely devastating. This is the worst way to go, in a sense. So don't fall for that one. I think e5 is also bad for similar reasons. Knight e4 maybe. Take the knight, don't do it, you know, check. If you take, you lose the queen. So what if you don't take, but then you lose the queen anyway? Even worse. So this is kind of what you not to do. So that's why I played bishop here, and after bishop c5, I played bishop e2, and h5, he wanted me to castle so he could do a kind of a fishing pole where if I take the knight, he would open up his rook. So we don't want to fall for that. Now, this is one of those rare things where, you know, at this stage, I'm not playing 1100. You're playing, you know, 100 years of research or computer research. So this is when things get dangerous, when somebody memorized lines and you walk right into it. So interestingly, 1100 even, you might start needing to know some traps. Some traps, but once you know it, then you don't do it. So this Stafford Gambit trap, don't fall for it by going bishop g5. Don't fall for it by castling. You want to just play something that stops them from doing that one trap. I believe bishop e3 is also okay. h3 is fine as well. That's what I played. And my opponent simply did not know what to do after this. And Trigger happily played this and didn't work out because I didn't castle. This simply doesn't work. So I'm not sure what Black would have done here. But I think I've gotten his attack kind of nullified. Hopefully that helps. Okay, so I was just curious about this position in the Stafford Gambit. And I found out one more move. h3 is a great move. Very practical and easy move to remember. There's one more move that actually is maybe the best. It's c3. Now, a lot of times Black's tricks are concerned with this queen d4 move. In many cases, even after h3, there's queen d4. Although here we can play a very strong move, rook f1 or even just castle. But in general, if you think this move is annoying, we can play c3. This bishop is also very dangerous. So by playing c3, we get an idea of shutting down the bishop. And next move, we could even play bishop here or d4. So these few moves, let's recap. e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6. After the Stafford Gambit, first, make sure you protect the pawn. Don't fall for traps. Just develop your bishop. Protect everything. Now either h3 or c3. Prevent your opponent's temporary attacks. Then you continue developing. And c3 controls the center too. Makes a lot of sense. On to the next game. Okay, so for our final game in the 11,000 to 1200 speed run, another e4. You haven't gotten any d4s yet. Knight c3. That's different than knight f3. Okay, knight is f6. As Black, I prefer to develop my kingside pieces. And we see a Vienna Gambit. So last game we saw a Stafford Gambit. Here we saw Vienna Gambit. I'm already sensing that my opponents are watching some of the favorite streamers. So I know that against Vienna Gambit, I like to counter Gambit and hit back the pawn. If he takes this pawn, I will take this pawn. This is part of the theory. And a lot of people are uncomfortable when you meet a Gambit with a counter gambit sometimes. They don't get what they want. And since white pushed the f pawn, I know that his king is weak. Something to think about there. Okay, so obviously here everything's got cleared off. I don't think this is what white wanted. Wait a second, didn't that pawn just move? I think there's a rule called en peasant. All right, so we traded that pawn off, and now we break his pawn structure. This pawn is clearly out there. I could check. He blocks, then I lose tempo. So let me start off. I mean, I really could. It's not bad. Is there anything better? Knight c6 seems like a decent move. Not sure the cost benefit analysis of these moves. I'm going to play knight c6. Go with my gut. He's going to play knight f3 probably. And I'm going to play either bishop g4 or bishop c5. I see that he might be trying to play this move. Bishop c4 does prevent him from castling. That's valuable. Now he could aggressively bring out his bishop, and my queen has to find a home. Probably thinking about playing queen d5, just putting the queen in the center. It's not so bad there. There's no tactics against my queen. It is undefended, but I don't see any checks with the bishop anywhere. So this is a very sharp position. One of the sharpest we've had, actually. I'm interested to see how it goes. So I can play this more. I can also play this. Trying to go over here. I'm going to start with this. Our plan is to go bishop g4 next. It's very sharp. Both of our kings are kind of in the middle. I feel like white's position is a bit more airy here. So black should be a little bit better. But anything can happen here. I mean, one plan for white here is to try to castle on the queen side. So he doesn't do that. This is a huge waste of tempo. In such an open position, you normally don't want to spend a move moving the same piece again. I really would recommend to play this. That was a one tempo too much. And not only that, this bishop was actually better on g5 than f4. I think he was worried about his pawn. But this is getting castled is way more important than a pawn. King is so weak here. Okay. Let's see if I can take advantage of stuff soon. There's a way to take the knight. He takes back. Seems like black is a little bit better there for the end game. If I want to keep some craziness in the position, I will play bishop here. It's interesting. Which way to go? It's always a question. Which way to go? I could also go back here as well. If I go here, he goes here. That's potentially a potential try. But he does make it really, really weak. So let's go for bishop h5. Keep the pin on. See what happens. And he plays g4. So I was thinking, you know, how can I take advantage of that pin there? I was thinking of knight d4 as an option. I can also just go back, like this is a standard move. I can also sack the bishop. So quite a number of interesting options here. I don't like sacking the bishop. It seems like I'm not getting enough back for it. Let's play the normal move, bishop g6. He's going to take. My queen is going to be hanging. I trade queens, take back. Slightly better position. But white's playing okay so far. He's not made any big blunders. So I'm calculating, spending time on the most complicated variations. Okay, he could have taken the bishop and then would have been an endgame. Doesn't do it. All right, now I'm tempted to play knight d4. This is the move that I wanted to play in the beginning because every time he moves his knight, I hit the rook with check. So the fact that he put his queen here makes me want to do it more, and it looks like it's more forcing than before. You're attacking the queen and the knight at the same time. It's practically a fork. So he's in some trouble now. So you can see one of the common mistakes is missing the opponent's forcing moves and your own forcing moves, and not understanding the importance of forcing moves. Checks, captures, and threats. That was a clear threat. Now we have a capture check, winning a knight, and more to come. It's probably going to play king e2. Now I can even go back. I have the luxury of just repeating, getting my knight to safety, and then maybe trading bishops or castling. Yeah, I'm just going to go back. Then we'll take it from there depending on the opponent's response. Goes there. Now I'm looking for my checks, captures, and attacks. There's a check here, check back here, but that would just be repeating. There's captures all over the place. There's actually also a castling queenside. The most clean way seems to be just castling, because Black's position is so good that the position almost automatically plays. It's on autopilot here, just doing the normal, natural developing moves, and White's just stuck. He can't really do anything, and probably even that, just staying the same, the burden of that is just going to cause White to crumble immediately. So White plays, it's like a pass move, maybe even weakening the king a bit more. So let's take advantage of it. Check. A lot of weaknesses. There are checks here. If he blocks, he pulls out the rug from underneath the bishop, so that's not so good. I can check here. Yeah, he does play it, so I'll check back. So now what happened is I've induced the pawn to go here. And remember, my move castling actually brought the rook in the game too. So now there's 3 people versus just 2. We're going to break this dam open. So White can give up his queen, or move the king and give up the bishop. And I'm fearing that for White, I'm not just going to win this bishop. I'm going to probably end up winning the queen too. With bishop takes d3. And there are potential mate threats. If the king goes, if the king goes there, there's actually, well, there are way too many threats here. So check here, king goes. I mean, I'm trying to find something for White here, but there's nothing to avoid mate. To delay mate, I mean, there's nothing to delay mate. It's just too much. This is another crisscross mate. Now we see. I could take with the bishop, but this is cooler to finish with the bishop. And we have another crisscross mate. Good game. So White played a decent game. This Vienna Gambit, once again, we see inspired opening play, where we might need to know a couple of things. If I took the pawn, that would be a bad move because of e5. So that's why here, one of the better moves is to play d5. You can also play d6, but d5 is considered to be one of the main moves. So d5. If he takes here with the pawn, I would take back there. And what I did is I basically shifted the pawn to the other rank and doubled them. So I got enough unscathed here. The opening. He let me en passant, so that was probably a mistake. And this was all fine. Looks like he developed very normally here, and that's why it was a hard time to get anything here. But this was the move. Playing queen d2 or trying to castle was much more important. Even if I were to get this pawn, okay, I mean, first of all, queen e2 is possible, but let's just say I was able to get this pawn like that. Still not the end of the world. I'd rather get castled. This is not the end of the world because I'm the one in some danger. Some danger. So this is more risky for black. I would be careful taking the pawn, but protecting the pawn here was a mistake with bishop f4. And then here, once again, we see that white ended up not castling. The last emergency exit for white was to take this and trade into an endgame. Black is a little bit better due to some weaknesses in white's position, but nothing major. It's a normal position. But after it going here, everything went downhill. Okay. Hope you guys enjoyed it. I'll see you in the next video. Feel free to like the video, comment, and subscribe. Really appreciates it. Helps the algorithm. See you in the next speedrun. Take care. Bye.